Okay, we're going to start with the September-October list. Now, you guys will notice, and for one thing, I use really large print. That's why I can fill a whole page. The ladies and gentlemen that come once a month to the thing have heard me say this before. Because there are fewer and fewer publishers of fiction, Christian fiction, I get months where I only get a few new books, and I get months where I fill front and back. Last month was front and part of the back. This month, it's only one short list. Now, there's good books on here, I'm not saying that, but just know that, I don't have any control over that, but you guys do. As you continue to read them and buy them, the publishers pay attention. So, what you're doing today is a good thing. Okay. Should move that first before I throw it on the ground. Jan Kieran. This was actually a surprise to me. I had no idea she was working on an 8 Mitford book. Now that doesn't include some of the novellas she's done, but she just continues to write books about Mitford. I do remember when I was reading the first few of them, I'm thinking, I want to live in Mitford. All the people that live there are hilarious. And then I started paying attention, and you know what? We're all hilarious. The world is a funny, funny place, but Mitford is a nice place to go home to. You relax, you enjoy it. There's just a quiet, gentle story all the way through it. Father Tim and Cynthia are the core of the group there, but you get to meet them all again. Dooley and the mayor, and you talk about orange marmalade cake, which I have never had. It sounds delicious. So, and I know it's out in hardcover, I know. Usually 6 to 9 months on hers for softcover, so probably by April if you want to wait for a softcover. So, but you do get your 30% off, so that does make that a little more reasonable. But the Mitford books are, they're just all fun to read. Beth Wiseman is still writing her. You're looking for Amish writers besides Beverly Lewis, or you're waiting for Beverly or Wanda's new books to come out. Beth is a good filler. She does a good job with these. This is the Amish Secrets novels. I didn't get that on the paper, sorry about that. It is book number 3, A Brother's Keeper, and The Love Bears All Things is book 1 and 2. So, you know what, and she's very consistent. And I like that with an author, when you find one you like, and they're continuously writing the same way, the stories are different, but she's just consistently good. So this one, Charlotte has spent most of her life trying to figure out where she belongs. She sets out on a journey with her brother and ends up in Amish country. So, and there's some healing that is done there. Egypt's Sister by Angela Hunt. This is book number 1 of the Silent Years. It's the 400 years between the Old and New Testament. That's the Silent Years. So that's what this is about. This one is about Cleopatra. This is actually going to be my next book in the book club that I do on my blog. So if you're interested and you want to pick it up now, makes for easy reading. She has degrees in biblical study, and it shows up in her writing because these are so good. Because they focus on the story of the people, but because she knows what was going on and what they were wearing and who was conquering who at the time. It comes out in the story, and you learn things that you never knew before. I mean, I love Angela's writing anyways, whether it's the biblical or she's written contemporary and she's written some fantasy books and such. They're all fascinating. But I have to admit, I still go back to her biblical fiction over and over because they're so good. And they put faces on people that we read about in the Bible, and even if it's just, here's a section of history that we don't know about because it's quiet. It's easy to read about David and Goliath and Jesus. They're written in the Bible. These aren't. And suddenly, I can remember thinking as a kid, well, there wasn't any years there. It went from, they were in Babylon, and, now they're back in Israel. There were 400 years. And so that makes that just a fun, interesting read. Cleopatra is not the main character. It's actually a Hebrew daughter that is her royal tutor. So, The Assault, which is the Harbingers, cycle number 2, is by Bill Myers, Frank Peretti, Angela Hunt, and Alton Gansky. This is a spiritual warfare fantasy series. Been loads of fun to read. A lot of the younger adults are reading them. My 25-year-old daughter is already bugging me for book 3 and 4. because she is so enjoying these. So there's certain things when you're reading these that you gotta kind of let go, because she does use this, or they all use the spiritual realm. If you don't know what it is each one of them writes a book in the book. And they write all 4 characters, but they have one character that they write from the first person. So whoever and whichever, you can read the list on the back. Like Bill writes about the one. And so when Angela writes, she has to use the characteristics that Bill has established for that person, and all the way through the book. So, and it's fun because at first I was thinking, well, that's not going to be that much different. They're all going to be working together. You can hear each one of their voices come out very loudly. I mean, Frank Peretti's writing is Frank Peretti's writing. Angela Hunt's writing is Angela Hunt. It's very clear, and it makes for a very interesting read because it's from very different perspectives. And what's fun is one of the guys is writing a woman's perspective, so it makes it a little different. Blind Spot is book number 3 of the Chesapeake Valor series by Danny Petrie. Romantic suspense, nice and easy. Danny has just been consistently good, consistently selling. She's one of these Irene Hannon, Lynette Eason, Dee Henderson, all of those romantic suspense. That's what Danny jumps right in. This one she did a little bit different because the main characters were all guys. They were all friends. So each one has been each one is standalone, but all the characters show up in all 3 books. So I kind of sort of recommend them in order, but I have read her books out of order before and had no problem with that either. So this one is about Delane, however you want to pronounce that, Gray, and he is an FBI agent. So a little more in depth than saying, just doing the regular guy or cop books. So.
What are the first 2?
Oh, that's a great question. She asked which are the first 2. I should probably tell you that. Cold Shot and Still Life are both 1 and 2. And then Irene Hannon is starting a new series, Code of Honor. So Dangerous Illusion is this series, or the title of this one, and this is Trish Bailey. She is overloaded trying to deal with a demanding job, an ailing mother, and a healing heart. I think we can all write that book. Maybe not the healing heart, I don't know about that, but that's your personal business. So, but this one, again, she is, to be honest with you, Irene, I think is just getting better and better and better. I just read one of hers, and I will purposely pick ones out of middles of series sometimes, just to see how it works, so I can give you guys a good idea on that. So I haven't technically read this one yet, but I read one of hers. It was a book 2 of the last series, and I'm blanking on the title of it. But anyways, it was just fantastic because she writes such a good mystery. She has the romance in it, but it's a little bit less than some of the other authors, and focuses more on the mystery. And when I got to the end of the book, what I really liked is the 2 main characters weren't married. They were just thinking about dating, which is kind of normal when you've only known each other for like 3 weeks. I always like that. Oh, we've known each other for 3 months, now we're married and have 4 kids. Wait. So I do appreciate that. I mean, the romantic suspense is going to have romance in it, but for her, it's not the main storyline. Dangerous Legacy. This is Elizabeth Camden. I think this is a fantastic cover. It's absolutely beautiful. She has gone into where she's writing historical mysteries. So she has the romance in it, but she also has more of a mystery to it. She's always had them in her series, but she's bringing them out more and more. This lady, Lucy, is a telegraph operator, and she is a master of Morse code, which for a woman back in the day was a very rare thing. So she is a valuable asset to the Associated Press, but now she has a rival in the British News Agency. So there is going to be romance, you know that. And I'm sure the British accent will come out louder. If it doesn't, it should. So, and then Lady Jane Disappears. This is along the same lines, but this is a brand new author. So I enjoyed the mystery of it. Lady Jane, actually you meet her daughter and her husband, and she literally does disappear. Nobody knows where she went. They don't have a body, so they don't know if she's passed away or was murdered or ran away or whatever. And so the idea is her daughter is still searching for her. And so she ends up living in where the last place Lady Jane was. and hoping to find her, or at least find some answers. So this one was heavier on the romance than I expected, so as opposed to like this one, but it still doesn't take away from that really good missing person mystery of it. So hopefully she'll write some more. Leslie Gold is starting a new series called The Sisters of Lancaster County. A Plain Leaving is book number 1. She's also one of these authors that's kind of a nice one to fill in when you're waiting for some of your more favorite. And actually, I know she's a favorite of a lot of people. I saw quite a few of hers. But she does that they time her so she comes in between some of Bev Lewis's books, which works out really nice. So 3 years ago, Jessica walked away from everything of her family, their farm, and our Amish community. And then she clashed with the bishop, and so she has the argument. And she was making that decision, do I want to stay Amish or come back to the community and accept what he is saying, or do I move on with my life? So, and this, I believe I've heard it's going to be a 3-book series. Bethany Turner is also a new author. You're going to see this more and more with Baker, which is, again, Ravel and Bethany. They're trying lots of new authors, which I find exciting because they're reaching different readers this way. So this is actually geared towards the 20-somethings. And it makes me kind of laugh because I'm actually listening to a book on my overdrive on the way to work and home that reminds me of this book a little bit too, because it's just a nice contemporary story. It kind of deals with life, and it's got a good sense of humor, a little bit of romance in it. And if you can't tell, the main character is actually a writer. Sarah makes a comfortable living as a well-known best-selling author of steamy romance novels. Problem is her steamy romance is non-existent. So it is a little heavier on the romance, and it focuses on that. It is very clean. There is some kissing, if that's a problem, but there is no over the threshold of the bedroom, so which is good. So, but I've had a couple of the young ladies that work here have read it for me also, and they really enjoyed it. So it's got a little bit of a sense of humor to it, so there's kind of fun to it, but it's also deals with what is it like to have and try to find a good relationship in today's world. So I will tell you this much: I am so glad I don't have to date now. So. Book number 3 and I can never say that series, so you go ahead and read it, is Cimarron. It is a Western. It is, let me get you a date here on it. It is set in 1881, New Mexico. Book number 1 and 2 are No Way Up and A Long Way Gone. And this one is just the third sister, for those of you that have been reading it. If I remember the beginning of the series, they dressed as men and were fighting in the Civil War so that they could earn free land. And so now they're defending their land and trying, because now they're women that own land, and well, that wasn't allowed. So, but really cute books. You can tell the romance is in there. There is a good sense of humor. Mary writes with a wonderful sense of humor. All her books, when she started writing, always have that really good sense of humor to it. Even though it's Westerns, you got to be careful which guys you give it to, because it is heavy on the romance. And I know when guys read Westerns, they would rather have the shoot 'em up, chase down the bad guys Westerns, and then there's the lovely woman you ride off into the sunset. Well, this happens before the sunset, so there's a lot of romance. Okay, the one you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. Lynn Austin's new one's here. Yay, we're so excited. She will be here Thursday talking about it. I did touch briefly on it at 7 o'clock. There'll be plenty of room. Bring your copy back. You can get it signed at that time if you want. My sister dearly, and we are very, very different. Almost for the same reasons. And you know what? You guys can figure out which one's which. But I love books that have relationships with sisters that are good relationships. I mean, and I understand writing books about the stress points and you got sisters fighting and stuff, but when you have ones where the sisters are enjoying each other's company and they want to hang out and they go away on vacation together and things, I love that, because that's what Shri and I like to do. But these ladies actually ended up in Egypt and going all over the world. Now, if you read some of, and I'm trying to find where Lynn wrote about it, the author's notes in the back, you're going to want to read them. To be honest with you, I read them before I read the book. Read them after you read the book because they do give a little plot line away. But it tells you where she got the idea, and it's based on two sisters that actually existed and what they did. And it's just the coolest thing. So Lynn does that a lot anyway. So, but I do want to touch on a couple things. So this is the new one. This is not a new one, even though it has a new cover. This is one of her original books from way back when. She recovered it, touched it up a little bit, and has re-released it, okay? There was a lot of confusion when this one first came out. So if you don't have it, we have a few on the shelf. We can also special order it. And this is called Fly Away. Sorry, I should, yeah. You can't read this as I'm waving it around? Goodness. So anyways, this is actually about two, older folks and their adventures and what goes on. Really cute story. I was kind of sad when it did go out of print when she moved over to Bethany, but she bought the rights back for it and has released it. So, like I said, this is not a new one. In fact, some of you may still have the original cover on your shelves. I know, yeah, same name. I know, where's Cynthia? You got rid of this one, what, about 2 months before it came out again?
It fell apart.
Yeah, it fell apart, which is a good thing. That means people are reading it. And so, but I just wanted to make sure I held that one up. So this is the new one. Oops. Hold the Light by April. This actually is a very, very good book. It was very strongly recommended to me, and that's one of the reasons I brought it in, and then I had a chance to read it, by Susie Weinbrenner. She actually published at the same publisher and was asked to endorse this book, so she had a chance to read it. It's about an artist who's going blind. So her whole world is painting. That's how she makes a living. That's how she breathes. She's a teacher of painting, and now she's going blind. I don't know about you, but that actually, because of how much I read, is my worst nightmare. And, you know, not just the everyday, okay, now I can't drive and walking and all this stuff. It's, I can't do what is in my heart. And so she can't do painting. So that's this book. And it is just, it is so, and Susie used the word raw. And that is the right word for it, because the emotions are right there. There's nothing bad in it. I mean, you're not going to have foul language or any of that, but her anger is there, and you know it. And her quiet acceptance as she works her way through it is there. But her happiness and her sadness, I mean, you will know all the emotions of this book and this character, and you will live it right alongside of her. Even if, you know, you never experienced it. So it is well done. I expect more from April. To be honest with you, if she writes like this a lot, one of the bigger publishers will pick her up very quickly. But a very well done book. I don't have a ton of them, so just special order it. The Dishonorable Miss Delancey, book number 3 of the Regency Brides, A Legacy of Grace. Book number 1, I had a few of them left at the $5 total. And then book number 2 is out, and I'm quickly trying to subtly find those titles for you. The Elusive Miss Ellison is book 1, and The Captivating Lady Charlotte is book number 2. So, you know, with the title of the series being Regency Brides, you know it's a Regency Romance. These are very much that. And, you know, and I know that's not correct English, but I don't know how else to put it, because sometimes things just fit that so well that, you know, if it was in Webster's dictionary, this is a picture of what Regency Romance should be. Okay? That's all it is. And it's very simple. They're very light. There's no, you know, these are the books you take on vacation because you just relax while you're reading them. There is a little bit of mystery or a little bit of stress in there. You gotta have that in the book. But you know what? They're well done. And they're just this quiet little series that has done very well in my store. And I get so excited when these little things, this is actually what makes it even more fun is it's Creakle. So we even support local, yes. So, but yeah, and they did a beautiful job on the covers. So they each fit the books very, very well. So if you haven't picked them up, make sure you check them out. Caroline, Little House Revisited. I have revisited Little House, I don't know how many times. I know there was a kids series that did Caroline and then Laura's great-grandmother or grandmother. And so we were talking about this the other day, and I said, I can remember, I have read the Little House books. They were my Anne of Green Gables. I didn't read Anne of Green Gables very often, but I read the Little House books until they fell apart. I mean, I read them and read them and read them. And I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old, and I read Little House in the Big Woods. And you know, at the very end, Mom and Pop pack up the wagon to leave to do the next book. And it struck me so that she was going to get in that wagon and never see her grandparents again. And it just floored me. So that, you know, was another reason, you know, because nowadays, good heavens, we FaceTime with people around the world. So, you know, we stay connected, but they would never see them again. So anyways, here we go again. This is Carolina, and yeah, I haven't read it yet, and I do want to. I did read a little bit of it at the beginning. It is hardcover, I know, and I don't know if and when it will come out in softcover, but it is her story, and it's before. So, yeah, there you go. From the mother's perspective instead of Laura's. Reynolds and Collins, and actually the next one, Bill Myers. This is a little new publishing company that these authors are kind of sort of self-pubbing, but they're trying harder to make sure bookstores know these books exist. Because I know, I hear from you guys every once in a while, oh, here's the one that did a self-pub, and I go look at it and we bring it in. These are trying to make sure I know about them. So Randall and Collins, she writes really good mysteries. I read the one, these are standalones, but the one she wrote before that, and she still writes that kind of edgy little creepy mystery where you kind of go, oh good, now I don't sleep tonight. So this one is actually set in Idaho. How often do you send a book in Idaho? So, which I actually love that. So, but yeah, she's always one of these good ones. Now, I almost didn't do that, but I wanted to mention the new publishing house. So Bill Myers is actually devoted heart. It's called A Modern Nativity, as if Jesus wasn't born 2,000 years ago, but was born now, and what that would entail. So just a little book. It is kind of considered a Christian novella, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but it is Bill Myers, so he's a good writer. And then Lanny, our receiving clerk, this is not on your list, so we would have had 2 signs if I had known this, or I would have printed small. But anyways, this is book number 3 of the Lone Star Heroes Love Stories, Love Held Captive by Shelley Shepard Gray. Literally came in the doors this morning, so that's why he rushed it out. A Loyal Heart and An Uncommon Protector are books number 1 and 2 of this series. If I remember right with this series, because I didn't get much chance to review it, obviously because I was busy, they're standalones, but they're after the Civil War. So, and she writes lots of Amish. You might know her as an Amish writer also, but she does this historical fiction that has actually been very well received. So, and she does focus more on the fiction story of it, as opposed, or I mean, the historical story of it, as opposed to the romance. Romance is in there, but I actually have guys that read the history book. So, okay, now we're going to move off to the book review for Librarians Day, October 2017. Oh, we got plenty of time. It was only a half hour. I should talk slower. I gotta find out why that. Okay. This is going to be a little more awkward, so we'll see if we can figure this out. By the way, once I'm done here, these books are all purchasable. What you buy, I don't have to put back. And you know me, I don't recommend hardcover books strongly very often, but I'm gonna. This is one of the best, hardest books I have ever read because it deals with children, which makes it just, oh. In the Tennessee Children's Home, there was a lady who got a little zealous on who the children she would give out for adoption. And she decided that if they were poor or didn't have a permanent home, those children must need to have a permanent home. And she would literally steal these children away from their homes and then adopt them out, change their names, break up families, and then adopt them. And so there are still people trying to find siblings that were adopted out at that time. And they can't find them back because their names were changed. They didn't say, you know, she would even change the name of the parents. This came from such and such because of this. And so I mean, you're looking at history and you don't know what that is. So this is the story of a little girl who is 12, And she watches all her little siblings, including a baby, get adopted out and taken away from her and her parents. She is taken into the home too. And so they call these split times where there's a contemporary and historical. So there's a contemporary story where there's somebody trying to find their family back. And now you know why it was one of the hardest books I've ever read, because I cannot imagine the nightmare that went into that. So it is based on actual things that did happen. This did happen. This woman, she had the police department in on it. I mean, there was just a whole bunch of people. And of course, she made lots and lots and lots of money because she adopted these children out to families that were well off. So if you go, you can go online and you can read more about it. They still have pictures up on the one website I was on, Still Looking For, and there's a little picture. So, yeah, when things like this is when fiction is doing good. It really is, because you can learn something. There you go. And I know a lot of you have already read it. This is on the list. I'm not going to review it again because, well, I'm not that interested. Catching the Wind, it is one of the 35% off specials. This is also a split time one. This is about a young man, and makes for a very, very interesting read because of what happened with her and him. And so, to be honest with you, I enjoyed the contemporary story, don't get me wrong. I would have stayed in the historical story because it was so fascinating. Because, so often we read the stories about what was happening during World War II and it's an adult perspective. This is an adult book. Please don't give this to kids, but it's the kids' view of it and what these adult issues were doing to their childhood. And that makes for a different point of view on these stories. So very well written. A lot of the Melody Dobson, if you find any of her books, go ahead and pick them up. They're good. They're just good. The Hideaway. I do not want to live in Louisiana or down where the hurricanes are. I did live in South Carolina when my husband was in the Marine Corps, and we lived through a hurricane watch. I would live through a tornado watch and or a snowstorm every time. Hurricane watches are just a trip because it lasts over 2 weeks. These tornado watches are only a couple hours. But this one is very good. This is about a young lady. She goes home to where her grandmother is after her grandmother passes away, and she finds out her grandmother's story because she didn't know it. Her grandmother was just that crazy lady that I lived with because my mother was crazier. And it makes for a really good story. It's that don't judge anybody until you walk a mile in their shoes. Grandma was the way she was because of the things that happened to her as an adult. And so it was very, very good. It's a gentle story. It's not that intense story that Lisa wrote. It's just a good story. It was one of these that you want to join the rocker here. And you put up a little sweet tea in between you, and you sit there for the afternoon. Perfect. So, but she's one of these too that does a good job with the words. You feel the heat and the humidity, and you can hear the cicadas. And you know what it's like to live along the bog and the river that runs behind the house. So I like that part of the story. It just makes for a good read. Rachel Hawk's books, some of them are heavy in the romance. You can read some of those on the back. Some of them are $5 books. This one is one of them. This one is actually something that is starting to really show up in books in the Christian market, is books about writers. Which is kind of an interesting perspective. But this one is actually about an author who has writer's block. She has a book number 1, was a bestseller. Stores like me would have been going, I can't keep it on the shelf, it's so good. And now she's asked, and she has signed a contract for book number 2, and she can't write 2 sentences that make sense. It's funny because she puts some of the writing in the book, and so it's like, and the day was beautiful, and then X, Z, Q, P, F, W, and she just wanders off onto something else. So, but finding out what is causing the writer's block is what makes the book good, okay? It has nothing to do with writing a #1 bestseller. It has to do with everything that's in your heart. I heard it once a long time ago that if you want to write a book, sit down and open a vein, and you can bleed the story, and most authors will agree with that. And that's what this is about. So very well done. There's a little romance in there, but it's just a good contemporary story again. Life of Jane. This is about 2 sisters, and then they go and live in, Life of Jane is not the correct title. Jane of Austen is the correct name. I'm just making things up. I hope you're paying attention. There's no Amish in India either. I know who of you guys were here that day. So anyways, this is actually about Jane and her sister, and they end up living in Austin, Texas. Do you ever have that when you realize what you said and it's running around in your head and your head's going, stop saying that, that's not right. That's what my head was doing. So, yes, and I'm not crazy, I've been tested. So, anyways, these guys owned a tea shop in San Francisco, and because of dealings that their dad did, they end up losing the tea shop. And so they end up having to move and restart over. So that's what this is. She is the main character is a big fan of Jane Austen, as is the author, Hilary Mantel Lodge. If you've read some of her other stuff, you'll see the Jane Austen come out in her books. But just a neat story of starting over, and how, you can find that devastating if you lose things, and it is, don't get me wrong, but it's a fresh start. And you can see it from different perspectives. It can make you bitter, or it can make you content. And so you're finding out what your contentment is. So there is different age sisters in here, and so very, very well done. One of these that if you have these 30-something mothers that are reading, and they only need these little books that I can pick up and read quickly, this is one of those kind of books. It's not going to solve the world's problems. There isn't great big issues in the book. It's just a good story. These are the kind of books that I read when my kids were this high, and you're trying to read quickly while they're napping for 4 seconds. Or you're reading that late at night when you're trying to keep your eyes open. These are brilliant books for that. So, but anything by Hilary, check them out. They're all really pretty good. So I've enjoyed them all. I think she's even got a couple of historical ones if I remember correctly. But Liar's Winter. I actually have had a couple of you people ask about this one. She does have another book called Mercy's Reign. They are separate, standalone books. This one is about Wokill. And yes, you will. The only reason I know how to pronounce her name is because she says it. Thank goodness in the book, because I would not have by the spelling, but it's called Wokill. And she is actually stolen from her mother when she is just a newborn baby. And when the person that took her gets her home, they realize she has a birthmark. And so she is labeled the devil's daughter. And so they hide her away for 19 years. And then something happens. It happens very early in the book, but it's not a long book. So I'm not going to give you a whole lot away, but she ends up getting away from them, and why. And she discovers a world out there that she never knew existed. It is historical. It's set in the 30s. So you have a lot of the superstition and such. So it's a story of bullying to the extreme, but it's also a story of accepting for yourself who you are because of what you're on the inside, not what you look like. And well done. It didn't take me long to read it. It moves right along. You will find yourself falling in love with Wokill in spite of her, because she's a little rough around the edges, and you can imagine she's never been to school, she's never been in society, so she doesn't always know proper ways to interact with people. And there's some really fun characters in there, and there's some really just plain evil people in there. And but it makes for a wonderful read. And I've actually had more than one guy read this book and enjoy it, because it's just a historical story, and that's what they're looking for. So, have Patricia Bradley, Memphis Cold Case, Justice Buried. I think it says Justice Berries. I had an extra S, so I used it. I didn't have an extra D. But anyways, these are romantic suspense. She did a little 4-book series that was very quiet, didn't sell well, and then they changed the covers, and this Cold Case series, book number 1 looks a lot like this, only it's bright red, is titled Justice Delayed, and this series has been just jumping off the shelf. Like I said, it is the romantic suspense, but she leans more towards the mystery. There's an older gentleman that shops here a couple times a month, and he loves her. He liked her first series, but he loves this series. He says these are so good because she's focusing again more on the mystery. So this is Kelsey Allen and her group, and they are doing, obviously from the series, you can see the cold cases of Memphis and going back. So it should be, yep, Loving Luther. didn't know much about Martin Luther's wife. Found out about Martin Luther's life from Judy Hedman's book. Enjoyed it. It was a good book. And so I started researching Katrina. She is a fascinating woman, and I cannot wait to meet her someday. She would fit right in here. She was bright, she was intelligent, she spoke and read Latin. She actually was a governess for a little while after she stopped being a nun, before she married Martin. I mean, so this woman, she basically was probably side by side with Martin while he's nailing the 95 Theses to the door, because she was a perfect counterpoint to him. She challenged him. She put up with his, if you don't anything know about Martin, the guy was nuts. He had so many quirks, it was amazing. In fact, my favorite one of his is he would be very open to listening to you and then go, yeah, but we're going to still do it my way. And he insisted on it, and she didn't put up with that. So really, Allison is just a really good writer. I am thoroughly enjoying this book. This is the book of the month for my book club this month, just because it's the Reformation's 500th birthday. I really didn't celebrate it much, though. I did not do a cake. So, but it is a really good book. And what it is, in fact, I was talking to a pastor about this book yesterday, because he's speaking on Martin Luther, and I gave him a copy of this book, and I said, you need to read this, because you need to include Catherine. Because there are little girls sitting in your aisles right now in your churches that have no idea that the women worked so hard for the church as they did, because they're not included in the history books. And this one, this book and this woman reminded me that, you know, he who wins writes the history books. The women did not get included, and we are still writing the history books, ladies. They're doing a good job. I don't want to take anything away from Martin. I'm not on my soapbox to say he was not a good person. I'm not going to do that. He did wonderful things. He's a great person. But there was somebody working alongside of him, not behind him, alongside of him. And we have to remind our little girls of that, you know what, there's good things out there for you. So, good book, really fun to read. She's always got a good sense of humor, and Martin in there is fun. He's just a funny little guy. He's another one I can't wait to meet and talk to, because he had so many quirks, wow. But there's a history book our history section about, and I don't remember the title, but it's about some of the things, some of his quirks and stuff that he did, and it's hilarious. So Martin was very human. Rule of Law, Randy Singer. This is his new one. It's been a few years since we've heard from Randy Singer, and I was very excited. It is a nice, thick book. It is a good law book. I have not read much of it. I only got a couple chapters at the beginning just to get a taste for it. Immediately hooked by it. I would love to tell you that I get everything read before Librarian's Day, but I try to get a little bit of everything read before Librarian's Day. This is one of those I have to go back and read. But this one, actually, the president of the country sends out some Navy SEALs, and they all end up getting wiped out. And then evidence points out that the president knew that. And so how do you prosecute the president of the United States for an actual crime? Okay, not impeachment, but a crime. Henry has already picked one of these up, so he'll tell me if he liked it. So, but I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm hoping to get it read in the next week or two. But you can always look at the blog, or you'll get a review list for it. So, and then right behind that, see, you should never move things around. You forget where you are. I'm over here, not over there. A Time to Stand is Robert Whitlock's new one. It is about racism. Anything by Robert. If you have guys or women that come into your library and say, "I love John Grisham," give them the Robert Whitlock books instead. I think they're even better. Don't put that on the internet. I'll be in trouble. I actually think so, because John Grisham used to, and he still does every once in a while, write these really good lawyer novels. And I absolutely devour them. And then in between there, he writes movie scripts. And you can predict the book all the way through it. Robert is still writing really good lawyer books. Okay? And this one, interestingly enough, your main character is African American. So you're going to see the story from a different perspective. And that I like. And he does, actually, he writes female leads all the time. And they're good. You know, they're not too pretty. And they're very subtle blonde. So I really like that. I appreciate that. So again, another good guy book. I'm going to take those over there so I don't forget where I'm going. This is a split time one that has to do with the Boston bombing and the Boston Massacre. that happened in the Revolutionary War. We all get those, the Tea Party, but before the Tea Party there was a Boston Massacre. So these two stories tie together, and it's kind of about the story of the recovery when something happens, which is kind of really relevant right now with what happened in Las Vegas, but it ties those together. And a lot of these have come about, I think, because those who don't learn history are, going to repeat it. And, well, we repeat history all the time, just read through a history book. But really well done, because as a survivor of the bombing, it is that survivor's guilt. How come me and not the person that was standing or running next to me? This woman was actually running in the marathon when the bomb went off. And how come? And who dies and what happens with them? So it's just really well done. And then, of course, you have a really good story about the Revolutionary War and what that was like and what side you were on and such like that. So it's not quite a spy novel, but it reads kind of like that. So I enjoyed that. Portrait of Vengeance by Carrie Stewart Parks is book number 3 of the Gwen Marcy books. Book number 4, excuse me. I do that all the time for her, sorry about that. A Cry from the Dust, The Bones Will Speak, and When Death Draws Near is book number 1, 2, and 3. These are really, really good. Not only because the mysteries in them are so good, but because of what she did with her main character, Gwen. She gave Gwen breast cancer. And what's it like to live as a survivor after the fact? And some of it is funny. Some of it makes you kind of just, it catches you a little. And she talks about what it's like when her hair is growing back and she's still wearing wigs, and then she gets sweaty and her head itches and all she wants to do is go, oh my gosh, really hard. But that's reality, you can relate. My sister or my daughter can relate, So these are things that we can or cannot relate to, but should know about. And that's why this series has been fascinating to me, because it's as Gwen recovers and things become normal, and then she gets a phone call from her doctor, and I have to talk to you. Well, she doesn't get to call him right back. So for 3 days, in her head, the cancer's back, I'm dying. All it is she needed a change of address. But for 3 days, because of what she's gone through, she's sure that's what's going on. And she, what's it like to live with that? So when you have a character that suddenly becomes very 3D, that's what makes this series good. Now, there is murder and mayhem. In fact, one of the books has snakes in it. I didn't like that. But they're very, very well written that way. Good mysteries to them. These are guy books, too, even though the main character is a female. There is almost non-existent romance. There are some really good guy characters. There's really good female characters. So this series overall has been very, very well done. To Wager Her Heart, I picked this one, because Tamara Alexander is a very good author, but she has 2 series that have had new books in it, and they're very close in title series-wise. One is the Belmead Plantation, and the other one is the Belmont series, Plantation. And they are listed here, so you can check them both out, but they are 2 separate series. And so when the 2 came out within a couple months of each other, there was a lot of confusion. So that's one of the reasons I picked this one. This one, I think it was last month it came out, or maybe the month before, but it was just recently. So this is the Belmead Plantation. And yes, you can go to the Belmead Plantation. In fact, she has hosted book talks there. So the other one she's done some teas at. But this one also is about the Northeast Line Railroad. And what's cool about her books is she writes the history. She writes the story. She does not write historical romances, okay? In fact, a lot of time her characters aren't, if they're already married or they're not married by the end of the book. And that is what's really neat about them. She doesn't go into minute detail about that. She tells you the history of our country. So, again, guys probably would read it if you could get them past the cover. So, I'm not going to review this one, but Egypt's Sister is on there again. And then Road to Paradise by Karen Barnett. This is the cutest little story I've ever read. Okay, that's not true, but it is very cute. Lots of fun. It is heavy on the romance, but it's about the national parks. This one is Mount Rainier out in Washington, and about when it was just becoming a national park and how hard the National Park Service had to fight to keep this being what it is today. In fact, there is a part in here where there is a land developer that wants to buy part of the land to put up hotels and a golf course and such, and how much they had to fight against that so we could have the national parks we have. She's going to do a couple other ones. I think the next one is Yellowstone, but she's going to do a few of the other national parks around the country. Like I said, it is a little heavier on the romance, but the story is worth it. It is really a cute story, and it's fun to read about, when the luxury accommodations had a big fireplace. My luxury has electricity and running water too, but it was fun. I could never live in that era. And then Life After. Now, I got to tell you, I made this list many, many weeks ago, okay? I did change a few because as the books came out, but this one actually, with what happened last weekend, is interesting that it's on the list. Because this is about a young lady who survives a bombing in Chicago. Now we know that the bombing hasn't happened in Chicago, that's where she said it. And this is about the person who is the only survivor. So now you know there are people that were at that concert in Las Vegas that are struggling with this now. Why was I either shot and survived or not shot? And so this is what survivor's guilt is like. And I know people that have talked about where they were in car accidents where somebody was killed and they struggle with survivor's guilt. Because why them and not me? I don't deserve to live any more than they do. I'm no more perfect. I'm no more wonderful. And she is single, and so some of the people killed in the bombing are parents or spouses. And so then she's trying to deal with that too. So very, very well done. I have to disagree with only a little part of it, but don't let that take away from the rest of the book. There's a very quick romance at the end of the book that I think could have been edited out, but personal opinion. But overall, a really well done book because of that issue that a lot of people do deal with. So, any questions? I gave you all the information you needed. Brilliant me. So thank you for coming. Please and you know what? And when you go to, if you need checking on your discounts and stuff, just grab one of those people that work here, and they'll help you with discounts or whatever you need. So there you go. Have fun.